One sport, millions of voices. This is Rugby Unity.
Hello everyone and welcome once again to Rugby Unity, a podcast with a very simple mission. How can we work together to help secure the future prosperity of rugby union around the world? My name is David Pembroke and I'm joined today by two special guests, and neither of them is Eddie Jones. But joining me in the studio is Ben Alexander, former Wallabies prop, capped 72 times for his country, and for the Brumbies, the all-time record holder with 154 Super Rugby appearances, but also, most importantly, he is also one of the owners of the Dock Hotel here in Canberra. And today we will be speaking about the very first live Rugby Unity podcast event, which will be held in association with the Dock on the day of the game next week in Canberra, July the 9th, and we'll be promoting that, but we'll also be speaking to Benny about life in the Lions, life against the Lions, what it's like to play against the Lions, and what it's like to be a part of these Lions series. So, Benny, welcome to Rugby Unity.
Cheers, Pemby. Thanks for having me.
We're also joined by Finn Morton, who is the Sevens editorial lead at Rugby Pass, one of the journalists for Rugby Pass. But for the moment, he is also on the ground following the Lions from west coast to east. And he joins us today from Brisbane ahead of tonight's match against the Reds at Suncorp Stadium. A great story. Finn is a fan of the Rugby Unity podcast. And a couple of weeks ago, he reached out to me and he said, listen, I'm going to be on the road travelling with the Wallabies, with the Lions across Australia as they play their provincial games, as they work through the Lions series. He said, do you think it'd be any use to you and the audience if I made myself available to join in on a number of podcasts along the way? And I said, well, of course. So Finn Morton, thank you very much for being so generous with your time, and welcome to the Rugby Unity podcast team.
Thanks for having me, mate, and thanks for saying yes to my text message.
Very good. So listen, you are now on the East Coast. You are now in Brisbane, and we are now looking forward to what will be another great contest today. What sort of weather will the game be played in tonight at Suncorp Stadium?
It's been pretty rainy the last couple of days here in Brisbane. I think that's been the common theme for a while now here, and hopefully it clears up a little bit, Pemby, because we want running rugby. We want to see the very best of the Lions and the Reds players, right? So, hopefully it clears up a bit and we can have some fun.
So off the back of last week out of Perth, what was the sort of mood post-game among the Lions? Certainly the first half, not what you'd expect. Certainly the Force had the dominance of the possession. They had field position. The kickoffs looked a bit ropey. Certainly the Force held them in the scrum. But class told in the end, and they ran away with it and won it quite comfortably. But post-match, what sort of energy was about not only the players but also the coaching staff led by Andy Farrell?
Yeah, Andy, he walked into the presser and he was smiling. He was pretty happy, and rightfully so. When you get a big win like that to start your tour here in Aussie, you're going to be pretty chuffed with that. But at the same time, a lot of things to work on. If that Lions side performed like that in that first half against the Wallaby side, then you'd think the Wallabies would be leading at halftime and in control to an extent. The Lions, plenty of work on, still maybe lacking that cohesion to an extent. And some costly mistakes as well at times. And credit to the Force, they gave it everything. That first 20 minutes was pretty entertaining, and the first half as well. But like you said, Pemby, the Lions, their class, they're obviously a world-class team, the best of the best from up north. They showed that during the second half and ran away with it. Finn Russell, very good at 10. Henry Pollock, we could list practically their whole starting side, their whole 23 if you want, when looking at standouts from that match, because that Lions side, sensational. But like I said, big work-ons, and they've got another chance tonight against Queensland Reds here in Brisbane to make a bit of a statement, I guess, in their second match of this tour.
So, Benny, what is it like when you do assemble and you do come together in those sort of early days of a tour, when you're coming with other players that you haven't played provincial rugby with and you're trying to find those combinations, whether it be in the line-out, whether it's in the scrum, at those kickoffs? Is it hard to try to find your pace and find your combination?
Yeah, I guess my only sort of experience of that was at like the start of every year with Wallabies when we'd come together from the States. And I think if you go back and look at our first game every year, there's a few shockers in there. With 2011, we lost to Samoa first week coming together. A lot of the Reds boys was still, celebrating their Super Rugby title win. And so we struggled that week. I think the next year we lost to Scotland at Newcastle on the bell. So traditionally it is really tough to get everyone together in that first week. There's the coach, there's a lot of work that the coach wants to do, players understanding patterns, play. So there's a ton of work to do, and it is very hard to get that balance right of getting the work done, but also being fresh to ready to perform, well on Saturday. And that's, it's probably the hardest week actually to prepare for and to actually, is that first week. And then once you get 1 week under your belt, things start to settle and you get into a good routine as a squad. And as you said, you start to get to know each other a bit better or the guys from the other states that you haven't played with. So, the first game's always the hardest, I feel. The Lions, huge improvement from Argentina the other week. Huge improvement. The fourth, half-time or 20 minutes in, I was thinking, geez, the Force looking good here, but I thought they needed more points on the board for how much territory and possession they had. They needed to be sort of 14-7 or 21-7. And then it would have really been a game. But, Lions just showed heaps of class, and Andy Farrell should be happy with that performance.
But the Force were brave, but they were never really going to threaten the Lions, to me. It looked like the Lions' defensive structures and systems, they were getting themselves organised and ready, and they weren't really threatened at any point, were they?
The Force didn't have a big ball carrier that really did either at the centres or in their back row. So the only try they got, I think it was Whitey, Nick White, little scoot from 9, pick and drive. So they didn't have a ball carrier sort of bending the line and then allowing the Force to play on the front foot. They were all intensity and they were going hard, but as we were talking before, just before the potty, Pemby, about the importance of the power game and Eddie's take on that. I think that was just all the Force were lacking. If they had 1 or 2 big ball carriers to just bend the line, I think they would have got some more points off the back of that. But that's something I think the Wallabies will have. They will have a few big ball carriers. So if they can sort of dominate in the way the Force played in that first 20, with a few big ball carriers and some clinical finishing, I think the Wallabies, they could have built a bit, as Finn said, they could have built a bigger lead and definitely been up at half-time. So, great signs for both teams. But,
Benny, I think if I can jump in, mate, it's, it wasn't a back rower. Well, he used to be, I guess, technically, but Dylan Peach out wide, he was definitely the danger man, wasn't he? During that first 20 and first half, in terms of a ball carrier who was making damage, he was brilliant every time he touched the ball. But the pack seemed to kind of lack a bit of impact in that regard, didn't they? During that first half and during the game as a whole. Nick Champion de Crepney moving to open side flanker, he in place for Carlo Tizzano. Obviously, it's in size to him. He was brilliant on defence, but a tad quiet maybe with the ball in hand. But I think the beauty of these tour games is it's just the experience of getting to face the Lions, and that's like, Ben. It's such a rush for these guys, and even after the loss, Nick White walks into the presser and he had the biggest smile on his face I've ever seen from him. Like he was just, even despite being in the side that lost very comfortably, they got to verse the Lions, and that's something that you can't take away from these guys. But I think the Wallabies, they'll be a different beast.
Totally agree. What was the crowd number
it's about 46.
Yeah, so that's probably
46,000. It's a record crowd.
4.5 times the biggest crowd the Force those guys would have played in front of this year. So it would just been such an amazing spectacle for them. And
it's such sorry, Benny. It's such a win for Western Australian rugby as well. For them to take it out of HBF, to go to Optus, and to get a crowd, it was pretty cool. Like it was good conditions, and they have that pub. I think it's the biggest pub in Australia, right next to the stadium, and it was packed. Packed to the rafters before the game. People were having a great time, and to see that real rugby love atmosphere. This is 12 years in the making, boys. you can't help but love it. You know, I spent a bit of time walking around kind of the precinct before the game, and it was, yeah, you can't help but smile.
So good.
So, Benny, if I just take you back to this idea of the work that you've got to get done early, what is that work? What does it look like? How do you fill up your weeks as you're trying to prepare for these games? What would the Lions guys be doing to get ready as they work through the series, but certainly particularly at this time of the tour?
Yeah, so it's not physical, like a lot of fitness and gym work. You'll still do a bit of that, but a lot of it is knowledge work. So getting your line-out calls down pat, your starter plays, your multi-phase structure, so how you're going to attack multi-phase. I mean, I don't know what the backs do, where they come with kicking plans or something. So it's just a lot of knowledge work that you have to do and embed so that when you get into the big moments, all that stuff's automatic. You know where blokes is a 5'8", you know where everyone's going to be. And so there's just a lot of organisation, kind of like admin, really, is probably the best way to describe it for someone working in an office. There's just so much rugby admin you got to do. Of course, there'll be a little bit of physical stuff, but just, mentally. And I know for me in games, the best you play is when you go in very clear what you got to do. You're not thinking about too much. You just go out and you play off instinct. And you're just reacting to your teammates around you, and there's a lot of work. I know that sounds pretty simple. They just go out and just play, but it does take a lot of work to embed all those habits and those knowledge. So when someone does make a line-out call, you just do it without thinking. So there is a lot of work to get to that place where you're then just reacting to the call, and it's also you're just running off instinct after that.
Eddie Jones was saying in yesterday's program that they're the easy things to fix, in terms of those, kick-off receipts, the line-outs, the scrums, that just comes with time. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of the fitness, it's too late. Like, you can't build fitness and strength and all that in the last. Like, if a guy's not fit enough or strong enough now, it's too late for all that stuff. But none of the Lions guys, everyone's just come off either a Super Rugby season or a full European season. So everyone's fit, strong. They're as fit as strong as they're going to be. It is all that admin, knowing your calls and then building the trust between each other, especially for the guys from different states or countries, knowing that your mate will be there in that play to throw that offload or whatever it is. It's just nailing that admin and then building trust, and then the cohesion comes.
And just to Finn's point there about this specialness of this of playing against the Lions, can you describe what it's about? Can you describe why it is so important to players, and that Nick White, even though having been comprehensively beaten, would have gone in there after the game? It was a brave effort from the force. So certainly, the class, the gap in class was obvious, but to have had the opportunity to play against the Lions, can you explain that to the audience?
I think for Whitey, he would still be buzzing. He's still buzzing from when Brumbies beat him in 2013. Like all the guys, so I didn't play that match, but all the guys, obviously, was in the Brums that year. The way they talk about that night was probably the best night of their careers. Like they still, all those guys, you mentioned that game to Fards or Pete Kimlin or any of those guys, and they just light up. Like it was such a, you'd ask all of them, what's the best moment of your rugby career? And a lot of them would probably say that night. So Whitey said, it was a good chance for him to, very lucky to play the Lions twice. So reflecting on that. But for me, I grew up in Melbourne and the US, so I didn't really know much about rugby until we moved back to Australia, sort of the late 90s in the golden era, and really got caught up in the rugby, the golden era of Australian rugby. Loved watching the Wallabies, and most of the best players of the Wallabies were all Brumbies, so loved watching the Brumbies. And that, remember that 2001 series like it was yesterday, that Wallaby series, like unbelievable. Probably the peak of that golden era was that series.
Yeah.
And never dreamed to be a part of one sort of 12 years later. But last week I did a bit of actual research, like why is the Lions series so special? And I'd seen that since 1888 on the logo. So 140 years. I didn't realise, even though I played, I didn't realise how long it's been going for. And then looked up the first tour in 1888 to Australia and New Zealand. I think they played 35 games. 19 of them were AFL games, Aussie rules games. I couldn't believe that. The captain died in a boating accident, apparently. So this is all Wikipedia, so I might be getting my facts wrong. But, that's just such crazy tradition and history. Like, nearly 140 years, this once every 4-year event is happening. And just, I don't know, it's tell me another sport that does something like that. Like, it is just such a unique thing, and the game here really needs it. Like, great to hear what Finn was saying, how the buzz in Perth on the weekend. We had quite a few people in for the pub watching it, but just super excited for when the Lions come to town, and just for rugby to be front and centre of the Australian. We'll be front and centre in Canberra for those couple of days, but when the test matches start, really excited for rugby to be back sort of front and centre of the Australian sports psyche, where it was for a lot of the late 90s and early 2000s. Rugby was one of the most watched, talked about sport in Australia, and it's come a long way in the wrong direction since then, but just, so excited to hopefully feel the rugby love out in the community, and really excited for the Lions fans to come and bring it.
And for you, Finn, as a young guy, as a rugby journalist, what's it like getting ready to be involved in a Lions series? And can you give us a bit of an insight about what life is like as a journalist, a beat journalist, following it on a day-to-day basis? Because I'm pretty sure there's a lot of people out there who think you've got the best job on earth.
I think I do as well, to be fair. I've hit the jackpot. I'm quite lucky. Bit of backstory, boys. Like, when I was 11 years old, I reckon, I think I lost a bet at school one day that I couldn't go the whole day without saying the word rugby. So, like, it was always kind of the thing for me that this is what I wanted to do. And then, being here now and getting the tap on the shoulder to say, covering the Lions tour, it's, like you kind of alluded to, Pemby, it's the stuff people dream of, and, don't take it for granted. And it's pretty surreal being here on the ground too, right? Like, you have to understand, I think for a lot of us journos who are rugby mad, this is a career milestone. This is a dream come true in itself, covering the Lions. We definitely felt that over in Perth. And for me, being here in Brisbane this week, it's where I grew up in Brisbane. It is kind of this quite special moment, and it's a very busy week. It always is with the Lions, and it doesn't stop. We obviously had the game in Perth on Saturday, a travel day on Sunday, and then straight back into media on Monday, Tuesday, and it's game day today. So the fun doesn't stop. We don't want it to stop. It's going to be a long 6 weeks. That said, a fun 6 weeks. Jumping from Lions press conference to, say, Reds press conference this week, or Tars later in the week, and you're getting to chat to a lot of different players, coaches about their experiences with the Lions and what it means to play and participate in the series. And like Ben said, like, it's it's such a cool experience to be a part of, and that extends to us journalists as well, I think, as well. So every press conference, it's a lot of fun.
So how do you go about trying to find stories that not everybody else is writing about?
I think, it's a good question. I think from an Australian point of view, I think the Aussie players are quite accessible at their super clubs at the moment. So exploring that, I planned on talking to Ryan Smith this week. I want to chat to a couple of Tars players later in the week. I think from a Lions point of view, it's all pretty. They're very well structured in terms of how they do their media. In terms of, they have their player coach up on team announcement day. They might put another player or two up as well. And it's just about asking the right questions, right? But everything's basically done in a media scrum when it comes to the Lions, and it'll be the same with the Wallabies, I presume, when that test series runs around. There's obviously a lot of demand for these players, so you can understand that not every journalist is going to be able to speak to a Lions player one-on-one, but exploring things where you can. Even, I think I heard a few months ago that before the Sydney test, there's a pub in North Sydney Oval which is going to be fully booked out, and that's across the road from the Wallaroos are going to play Wales, and it's stuff like that, kind of almost not away from rugby, but things that are an extension of the actual game itself. Exploring that's probably the unique approach to being a journalist during this tour, I think.
Is it too controlled?
No, I don't think so. Again, I think it's realistic. If every journalist requested a one-on-one, then Henry Pollock wouldn't have any time to himself, because everyone wants to speak to him right now. He's the player that I've asked at least 3 different players about Henry Pollock in a week. He's the 20-year-old rising star in the rugby world that everyone wants to know more about because his character and his personality is unique. So again, from that sense, you can understand why it is a bit controlled. But it's just about doing what you can when you can to try and do good journalism anyway and stand out.
So, Benny, as a player, the media, what was your relationship like with the media?
Well, I actually studied sports journalism at uni, Pemby. I don't know with your son. Timbo didn't study journo, but it was crazy for that Lions series, actually. And that's probably something I certainly wasn't, maybe as a group, we weren't really ready for. Like, we knew, the 01 series was massive and we're pretty confident heading into 2013 because we'd had a really good run against Wales and they'd picked, lots of Welsh players. So we were feeling confident. Maybe I wouldn't say we were too relaxed, but we were we were somewhere on the Sunshine Coast in camp, and looking back, we didn't even play a warm-up test, which I think, looking back, was a mistake. I'm really glad the Wallabies are playing Fiji this weekend, because I think, maybe we're a bit underdone going into that first test, because we trained a lot, but so what I guess I'm trying to say, we're a bit isolated in the lead-up, but then I remember the first week when we got to Brisbane for the first test, it was like a Tuesday, and I went out for lunch or maybe it was the Wednesday before the Brumbies test, just walking down Queen Street Mall on my day off, and every pub at middle of the day was packed with people wearing red jerseys. Like, that was I still remember that moment walking down, just going, shit, we're on here. Like, and then I think that night was then the Brumbies Lions match. So it was, it was crazy. But then,
were you happy to talk to the press?
Yeah, I didn't mind. I mean, we're always taught, act like you're talking to the opposition. So don't say anything that's just going to get used, that's going to get misquoted or taken out of context to then fire up and create controversy. So we were told, be very diplomatic, be a bit bland, basically. I mean, not in those words, but that was what we were sort of taught to do, just not giving fuel for the opposition, basically. So it doesn't give you a lot of options. And but I remember, that last, the second...
You're a prop, though. Low demand.
Low demand, I know.
Low demand for you.
But that second week, I mean, in Melbourne, that's when it all really kicked. We just lost the first test, but then we had a few of the young boys, head out for a little midweeker in Melbourne, and that's when the media really kicked off. And we were lucky. We I don't know, just felt there was so much intensity and speculation. That sort of back half of that second week and then going into the third week, the decider, it was really intense, really intense. And I think looking back, the Lions certainly handled all that pressure much better, and it definitely showed on the field in that final match. We did not put our best foot forward, and they certainly played their best match of the series.
Yeah. And we'll come to that in a moment, because I do want to take you back to the worst moment in your career. But just to that point about bland, not saying anything, not wanting to give the opposition much. Have we moved on now? Don't we have to rugby? Because again, this podcast has a very simple purpose, and it's about helping secure the future prosperity of rugby union around the world. And we also mentioned Henry Pollock, and I want to get to him as well. But we need personality, we need coverage, we need engagement. How do we balance that between the competitive elements of it, but then also saying enough to be able to build personalities into the game? Because it's one of the things that rugby actually lacks, because it's the ultimate team sport where, no one's more important than the next person, and we've got to make sure that we all keep it even and all the rest of it. But that's just simply not going to cut it. So the game has to grow and mature. So to you first, Ben, how do we manage that? How do we grow stars like Henry Pollock? Because we want to see more of him. We want to see more of his personality. And we don't want to get into the situations, again, I think, where there was even, it was constructed ahead of the European final that he'd said something that he didn't actually say, and the opposition used it as a way of firing themselves up. So anyway, that's a long and convoluted question, but how do we build superstars in rugby?
Good question. I mean, you just look at the guys from my era that are really comfortable be themselves, that are media people now, is like the Honey Badger, Camo. He was a perfect example of a guy that just good Aussie larrikin. He I don't think he puts it on, but he hams it up a little bit for the cameras. But he's a really funny guy. Look at that, that great example. Look at the media career he's gone had. I mean, Eddie was another guy that was never shy to be himself. So I guess it's something about creating the environment where people feel comfortable to be themselves. I think that's really, and that's when people's then characters start to shine and come through. How you do that, I don't know.
But you don't want media people in the team saying be bland.
Yeah, well, they're not saying that. I think it's just like they're not saying. I don't know what they tell them now. I mean, that was the only bit of media training I had was from
be boring.
Was no, just talk as if you're talking to your opposition.
Yeah.
So pretend that your opposition is right there. Instead of the journo, it's if we're playing the All Blacks, it's Tony Woodcock. That's who I'm talking to. The guy I got a scrum against on Saturday. So and you don't want to fire him up. So, I don't know the answer to that, Pemby. You guys, Finn, what do you reckon, mate? Like, we want people to feel comfortable to be themselves, and maybe not the running their mouths and saying, "Oh, we're going to flog you this weekend," but like create an environment where people feel comfortable to be themselves. That's when their nature will shine through, and that's what I think people are really attracted to is the characters. And what do you reckon?
I think there's a nice middle there, isn't there, between the kind of the polar opposites of selling the fight, like if you're a boxer, just talking a lot of trash about your opponent, a lot of smack, and the opposite of just being completely bland. I think players need to be comfortable. A bit of that probably lies on us as rugby journalists, needing to build those relationships, whether it's with media managers and all the players and coaches, and it's just, and players as well, there's a little bit of, they just have to naturally feel comfortable in that environment. Like the first time I spoke to Carlo Tizzano was over the phone. He is the best personality in this country in terms of rugby, without any doubt, in my opinion, in terms of current players. He is so funny. And I'm not sure that a lot of rugby fans around the country know that yet.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
He's hilarious. He's fantastic. I spoke to him again at the Super Rugby launch this year in Sydney, and he's around my age. I'm 25. He's got to be around that. And we finished the interview, and he starts showing. He mentioned he does ice baths in a freezer back home in Perth. And after the interview, he's showing me photos of what it's like, and he's having a chat from one guy to another. And it's that kind of human angle of, we're just trying to get a story out. We're trying to promote these guys, but again, they've got to feel comfortable. Someone like Henry Pollock at 20 years old, clearly very comfortable. Not everyone's like that. So, I think a lot of journos just want to tell these stories, and that's why we're in the game. I think, we're rugby fans. We want these guys to be superstars, and to be superstars, they need to get their names out there. Fans need to know who these people really are, away from the field. So, and I think that's what a lot of other sports do really well. And that's something that we should strive to do better, I think, in rugby.
I totally agree, and that's an excellent point. That I know sometimes the relationship with the media becomes adversarial, and that's when all the stuff we're just talking about won't come to the surface. Why and how that happens, I'm not sure, but when the relationship between the team and the media becomes adversarial, your chances of players being able to just be themselves, and it just disappears, and it becomes, they become siege mentality. They lock down, all about results, and the character of the people just doesn't get a chance to shine.
Well, I would argue that as a sport, and this is globally, we have to make this change, and make this change quickly, culturally, because we're being eaten alive. When we go through the financial performances of rugby union around the world, whether it's at a national level, at a provincial professional level, we simply don't have enough money in the game to be able to fund everything that we need to do to realise our potential. Our potential for rugby is extraordinary. When you consider we are a global game with a footprint in 134 different countries, and we have the history that we do, we have the values that we do, we have such a great story to tell. But I just think at the moment that collectively we are just not there, and we really need to focus on this. And when someone like a young Pollock comes through now, we have to actively promote him. We have to actively support him, and I want to see him as a character. He is electric to watch on the field, isn't he? You can't take your eyes off him, because when he plays the game, he plays it with that joy and that fizz and that buzz. But also when you see him getting ready to go onto the field, he's like revving everybody up, and he's like a firecracker wanting to get onto the field.
People want us, you follow sport for emotion. And I think sorry to give another sport a plug, but Ricky Stewart here in Canberra, the Raiders coach, mate, I think he could coach his way out of a paper bag, but he shows so much emotion the fans love him.
Yeah.
Like they absolutely love him. I'm sorry, of course he's very premiership winning coach and taking the Raiders to grand final. So I take that back, Ricky, if you're listening. But they love him because of the emotions. That's why you watch sport. Life can be pretty boring sometimes, but to follow your team on that emotional roller coaster weekly and every season or once every 4 years. That's big. It's not all of life, but it's a big fun part of life is following your team, watching them and the players that you support, watching them, go through their highs and lows. And someone I've really watched for a very long time is like a LeBron James, and I'll be a little bit sad when he retires because I've been following him as a basketballist when I was at school and loved and followed the highs and lows of him going back to Cleveland to win that championship for his home city. Like it's awesome, those stories. And I would just say basketball, I think, do a really good job of it. The NBA, like with the Steph Currys and the LeBron Jameses.
And the tunnel fits.
And
the outfits that they wear. The fashion.
That wouldn't wash in rugby, mate.
Well,
not wash. No way. Front rowers wearing pink shoes and leather jackets to games. I don't think that.
Well, the Black Ferns in New Zealand, I think they've started doing it actually.
They just wear whatever to the game.
Outfits.
Yeah, kind of like NBA type stuff. Like they dress up quite fancy and it's quite. I think the Blues do it as well. The Blues men's team. So
the LA Giltinis did it. With Matt Giddo and he'd rock up to a game on a Harley, or him and Adam Ashley Cooper on an electric e-bike with like denim vests or something. So sorry to cut in, Finn, but yeah.
It's a fashion statement, isn't it? I don't know if I'd be caught wearing a denim jacket or anything.
But again, if it's authentic, if it's real, if it's that person, and full marks to the Black Ferns for doing it. And again, I think we're seeing a lot more character in the women's game at the moment. You're seeing it's so much more content being generated out of the women's 15s and the women's 7s. Lots of TikToks, lots of personality, lots of fashion. And again, I think collectively as a game, if we are to grow, to realise the potential of the game, we really have to move into this space because it's where the audiences are, it's where the emerging audiences are, and we have to be in that space. And when you look at the big leagues, like the NFL has a creative fashion director, the NBA has a fashion director, so they're leaning into this trend of being involved in culture, fashion, art, music, entertainment. And we just can't hold ourselves back at the moment and be, here we are, here we are, rugby, we're good and solid and all the rest of it. We have to move, we have to change, but we have to do it authentically. We have to do it our way. And I think that is the challenge, is finding where that way is. And there's going to be some missteps along the way, but unless the change happens, we are going to get eaten. Well, I believe we're being eaten alive at the moment, which is why I think we need to do much, much more, not only in that space, but the fan engagement. And regular listeners to this podcast will know about my campaign to get the teams to engage after the sport. And I'm going to come to that a bit later on because I want it to be seen. I want it to become a part of the game, to recognise the transformation in the information environment, because it's no longer just about the newspapers and, dare I say it, Rugby Pass and the radio stations and the TVs. The zeitgeist has moved. We are now operating in the creator economy, and we have to recognise that. And I did say in the program yesterday with Eddie, we were talking about the press tribune or the press box at the first game against Argentina. There would have been a quarter of it filled. The only empty seats were the 3/4 that weren't filled, because we had the traditional media in the first sort of 3 rows and then nobody there. So why aren't we going out to the influencers?
Get the rugby content creators.
Well, get them there. And they did have a half a dozen people there from TikTok, but why not fill every last one of the press seats so as they are filled with modern economy, creator economy,
modern communicators
who are building substantial audiences. That'd have to work, Finn, wouldn't it?
Yeah, but I think written press still has a place in the world. Hope so.
So you know what they'll be dirty about, these blokes? They don't want other people in the press room because they don't want them to eat their sausage rolls. No.
Maybe. Yeah, you got to get on the food when you can. I think I was first in when the food was served in Perth. But, mate, I think there's a place for both. There's, to back up my own profession for a job for a second, like there is obviously a place for written media. So there's always going to be a place for that because people have been reading for thousands of years. So there's that. But at the same time, media is changing in the sense that you look at TikTok, like you, Pemby, and your TikTok endeavors and how that's also working with content creators. I'm giving it a shot now, and that's a bit of fun. But also how the players are promoting themselves. And I think that's really important as well. To go back to your previous point, Pemby, that's how players are making themselves more real. And more personable, and I think that's a big win, especially in the women's game. Caitlin Vaholkolo from New Zealand, she's brilliant on there. She's one of the best wingers in rugby, in women's rugby, but you wouldn't necessarily know it if you go off her TikTok. You'd see her as just being a woman from New Zealand who's a big fan of Lilo and Stitch. That's how she comes across on TikTok. Then there's obviously Alona Ma, who is on social media the biggest name in rugby, by a margin. I think she has more followers than the All Blacks and Springboks combined on Instagram. So, like, how these women are eclipsing the men's game in terms of personability and how they can how they present themselves, it's fantastic. I think from a sevens point of view, which I cover a lot of at Rugby Pass, it's the sevens players are doing a lot more of that. The Levi sisters, Maddie and Tegan. A lot of the New Zealand players, Michaela Blythe, Break now, Stacey Waka, they're all doing this stuff and it's fantastic. So media and players alike, I'd say it's a great thing for anyone and everyone to keep promoting the game on social media because it's the way of the times, but at the same time, there's always going to be a place for written press.
Okay, so just back up what Finn was saying. That Alona Ma, when before the Brumbies Reds game this year,
USA,
the Wallaroos played USA,
yep.
Alona Ma. And it was the Brumbies' biggest crowd of the year, and they reckon, and Gavin Hunt at the Brumbies GM said he reckoned Alona Ma dragged a few thousand fans from Sydney down on her own, just to come see her.
Yeah, she did.
So, the Waratahs struggled to get that many fans down to come down, but Alona Ma, she did it pretty easily. So,
but from a practical point of view, how would the media react to having, 3/4 of the press box full of content creators?
I can tell you on the Lions tour, I don't think there's space. So, there's still, but again, it's a different type of journalism, isn't it? It's a different type of media. It's a different approach. I don't know if there would necessarily be any sour grapes about it or anything. But people have to understand that there's definitely a place for that now, just as there's a place for broadcast, radio, and written press. It's just the sign of the times.
But this change needs to happen because I can tell you this year at the Brumbies events, because traditional media, and let's drop them into that bucket, they had press conferences. Steve Larkham walked into press conferences and nobody was there. Nobody was there to ask questions. So we have to change the way we think about the media.
But Pemby, is that because Bernie, is the complete opposite to Ricky Stewart? Like, Bernie is very analytical, brilliant, one of my favourite players, great coach, very analytical, but
Don't you bag Stephen Larkham to me.
But does he show any emotion? Does he show any emotion in the press conferences? Does he?
I think he's
like a Ricky Stewart, not like Ricky Stewart.
No, but Ricky, okay, but Ricky is, Ricky's different. Ricky, you don't know what you're going to get out of Ricky because Ricky doesn't know what's going to come out of Ricky, and Stephen is a different personality. But if you listen to what Steve's got to say, he's very thoughtful.
Unbelievably insightful and one of the best rugby minds there is. So just that emotional outburst. I think people love that, like that, and that's. Even if it's irrational, like some of Ricky's. Well, I don't know if Ricky's ones are irrational. I haven't followed that closely.
No, I know Ricky well, and Ricky,
super passion. People
by
love
his own
passion.
admission, Ricky does not know what he's going to do when he goes in there. There is no game plan for his press conference, which is why they're so entertaining. And listen, for people who are overseas listening, we're talking about a rugby league coach in Australia, fantastic rugby union player actually back in his day, former Wallaby, went on to be a great rugby league player. But jump onto YouTube and just Google Ricky Stewart press conferences and you'll see what we're talking about. He really gives the... he's been, I don't know how much money he's paid in
fined
fines.
by the NRL,
He's been fined so many times. But anyway, I think this is a topic that we've got to keep coming back to and we've got to keep promoting it because we have to get more coverage. And I think the real opportunity as more of this creator economy, influencer content is generated, particularly through the Women's World Cup. Collectively, the community of world rugby needs to get on, share it, move it, and let's grow the game because that's where the attention is. That's where the eyeballs are. And
the young eyeballs. But I agree with Finn, the traditional, there's still huge, like tons of people.
The massive influence. No, I'm not arguing that we abandon traditional media, but what I'm saying is like the Cannes Creative Festival was on a couple of weeks ago and the whole buzz was all around creators. That's where it's going. Look at the size of YouTube now. YouTube has 2 billion active users every day. We need more and more and more interesting, engaging content on YouTube because, again, what will happen is money follows the eyeballs. And we need the money. Because World Rugby doesn't have enough money to fund everything it needs to do. Every one of the national unions doesn't have enough money to fund what they need to do. Every one of the professional teams go all the way through the game. There is a deficit of funding and we have to be smarter about the way we unlock funding. But anyway, I'll get off my high horse. Finn, your view.
Sorry, Pimmy, I was just going to say, mate, I think rather than it's not like it's positioned to be content creators are the enemy to traditional media. I think it's about welcoming them into the media landscape with open arms, and that's how it should be approached. Signs are definitely changing, but I think one can support the other and vice versa. So again, those are just my 2 cents. I think it's
you're young enough. You're 25. Yeah. You can take on the responsibility to make this work. And Ben Alexander, you're prolific on social media, so you could do a bit more as well. And we do need to promote it. But let's go back to the footy because tonight, I reckon it's the best rugby stadium in the world, Suncorp. Ben, discuss.
Yeah, it's right up there.
Yeah.
It's definitely, from a fan point of view, it's one of the best. Not a bad seat in the house. You got all the pubs and restaurants around, so it's amazing atmosphere. Like when it's full, so I think it's definitely the best stadium in Australia. I mean, Twickenham and Millennium Stadium are even bigger versions of it. So I wouldn't say it's the best one, but it's definitely the best in Australia. So we'll get a little taster tonight against the Reds, and then that first test, the excitement leading up to that first test is just unbelievable. So it's going to be a place to be tonight and in, week and a half till, first test. So
yeah,
it's going to be awesome.
Looking forward to it. So Finn, from your point of view, from a game perspective, what will you be expecting to see from the Lions? Obviously, more cohesion, more combination, fewer errors in their game.
All of the above. All of the above. I think it's obviously changes to the side, and as there's always going to be with the Lions side 4 days after they played their other game. But cohesion's really important. That's been the word of the day, both in that Argentina test in Dublin and last weekend in Perth. A lot of drop ball, a lot of mistakes. These are some of the world's best players, and they haven't necessarily looked like it for the full 80 minutes in those two performances. So they really need to start getting things right because, I don't want to say they're running out of time, but the test matches they're rapidly approaching, and that's exciting from a fan and a journalist point of view. But for the players, they have to start getting these things right and working, really fine tuning these combinations. So they'll be after a top performance. But that said, the Queensland Reds, they nearly beat Wales last year. I know the Lions are a different beast. Don't get me wrong, but would love to see the Reds push the Lions and really make a bit of a statement as well for Australian rugby going to those test matches.
Do the Reds have enough depth to go with the Lions for 80 minutes?
Hope so. Can I be optimistic and say yes? I think it's, I think on paper, if you look at the four super clubs at the moment, obviously the Reds and the Brumbies, you look at them as being the teams with probably the best chance of maybe beating the Lions, obviously depending on who's available from the Wallabies camp and whatnot. But they've got a very good coach. He goes pretty all right, Les Kiss, new Wallabies coach, right? So from next year. So when you've got a great rugby guru at the helm leading the way and a pretty decent squad of players as well. Of course, Hunter Paisami and Matt Fass are both released from Wallabies camp to play this match. Let's be optimistic. I'm not going to say the Lions. I'm not going to say the Reds are going to win, but I also don't want to say the Lions are going to win by 50. That's the best non-answer I could give you, I think, Pemby.
Benny?
Yeah, I think if you just go back to the Force game, I think the Reds will come out firing. They just got to get some more points on the board. So they've got some big boys. Hunter Paisami's a good ball carrier. Lukan, I can't pronounce Lukan's surname. Salakai Lotta. Yeah, so Lukan, big body. So they'll go well at the set piece. Reds maul's been really good, but I assure, like throughout Super Rugby. But I think obviously the Lions will be able to should be able to defend it. So no, I'll give the same non-answer as Finn that Lions are definitely favourites, but I think the Reds can definitely challenge them a little bit more, definitely more than the Force.
Yeah, well, for mine...
And they got to need points early. They got to get a few tries early because this is such a big game for those Reds guys. So they'll be so fired up that first 15, 20 minutes. They got to get a good lead.
Benny, how do you control the emotion, I guess, in these big matches? Sorry to jump in, Pemby, but like that first 15, 20 minutes when you're raring to go, you've been counting down this day you've had it marked on the calendar for 2 months type thing. How do you make sure that you're not jumping out of the box?
Yeah, I'm certainly not, May. I'm certainly not the best person to ask that because I'd either be too fired up or not fired up enough. So for finding that balance of fire ups, actually, it's pretty hard, and it comes down to routine, preparation. But it is really hard it's such a big crack for us. Once every 12 years, like it's not like making the grand final or anything. Like it's such a unique opportunity. It is really hard to sort of manage and pace yourself. I guess just naturally you're going to be more fired up than you've ever, or more excited than you've ever been before. So you just got to go with it and go, right, all the Aussie sides are going to come out firing and they've got to make the most of that excitement and actually translate that to points on the board, because that means they will tire quicker because they come out so hard. It's like, it's like they're sprinting a marathon, starting at sprinting rather than saving themselves for the back half, which, if you compare that Force game, the Force was sprinting at the start and then the Lions they sort of got going and then they really didn't hit their straps till that second half and ended up winning the race quite comfortably. So you just got to go with it and, turn that energy and excitement into points.
Well, unlike you two, I am going to give a direct answer. I think the Lions are going to turn over the Reds and it'll be by at least 40 points, if not more. I just think the class of this Lions team, and I think this ability to continue to work together to get better combination, better cohesion, better understanding, they are so talented. And I do think, as again discussed with Eddie Jones yesterday on the podcast, about the emerging gap between the North and the South and the quality of the game in the North at the moment. And I think we saw that in a lot of the premiership. I think the balance has now shifted to the North. I think that's where the better rugby is now being played. And I just think there are much better players than we are at the moment in Australia, and I think there's always been this risk that Australia were not ready for this tour, and I don't think we are. And I think we are about to see it exposed, and it's going to happen. The first part of the exposure happened the other night in Perth, but it's now going to get even worse in Queensland.
Can I just add, I think it's going to be closer than what you've suggested. And one reason I think it's going to
so you're going to give an answer now.
It's going to be closer than what you said. And then the reason is, I'll give you a reason, that now we've got 2 matches of footage, of Lions footage. I know they're almost totally separate sides, but each Aussie side now that comes up to them's got a little bit more of a feel for what this Lions team is like. So they can do, they should never totally focus on the Lions and spend all their time analysing them, but they're going to have a better feel for what is this Lions team, how are they going to play, how are they going to work together. So by the time the test series comes up, the Wallabies are going to have 6 or 7 or 5 or 6 games of footage to actually go through, analyse, look for weaknesses or look for potential cracks. And so the Reds have now watched the RG game and the Force game, so they might have it's not going to win them the match, but I think they're going to have a bit better idea of how to approach and how to attack this Lions team. And I think that's only going to get a bigger, more advantage for the Waratahs and then the Brumbies, when the Lions have got even more games or there's more footage available.
Another bland answer.
Oh, come on, mate. He's a hard one, Finn. I hope you haven't had to work with Pemby too much, mate. It's hard work.
Yeah. No, look, there's no doubt the Lions are favourites, right? I think we can agree on that.
Yeah.
So,
of course.
No. It's a tough ask for the Reds. But, I think as Aussie rugby fans and ex-players, journos, whatever it is, let's be optimistic, Pemby.
Let's hope it's close. Let's hope it's close.
Yeah, let's hope it's close.
But listen, probably the main event really is going to happen in Canberra, Ben Alexander, when the Lions come to town. And that's part of what we're here today to talk about. And anybody who is listening to this today, if you know anyone who was sort of in and around Canberra who's going to come over for the match, we have a couple of days here in Canberra which are going to be quite special. There is a Lions Brumbies Legends lunch, which is going to be held on the Tuesday at the Hotel Realm. There are still tickets available, and you can go on to Humanitix and search it up, and you'll find it there. And it would be great to see some of our Lions friends at that lunch. It is selling out fast, but if you want to jump on and grab a ticket, it'd be great to see you there. I know Joe Roth will be there. And again, remember Joe Roth from the 2001 series. He turned it in Melbourne. He turned the series. I was on the sideline for the ABC, and it was all over. It was the most incredible atmosphere post what happened in Brisbane. And they came to Melbourne. It was at what is now called Marvel Stadium. The roof was closed. The noise was just phenomenal. And in that first half, you thought, the Lions have got this, but then Roffey pretty much single-handedly turned it around, built the confidence back into the boys, and they got the win and then went to Sydney for the turnaround. But certainly in the 2001 series, the Brumbies should have won that game when Paddy Howard threw that pass. Austin Healy took the intercept, scored the try. We lost the game in the last couple of minutes. And this was when we had, I think, 9 or 10 of the Brumbies players in the Wallabies. And Eddie Jones, it was, to this day, I still rate it as one of his finest coaching programs, because he sort of cobbled these guys together, took them to New Zealand to prepare, played a game over there, brought them back here and went within an absolute whisker. And then, obviously, in 2013, the Brumbies got the win. So it's going to be a great occasion in Canberra. It's going to be cold. It's going to be freezing cold. But, Ben, the Rugby Unity podcast and the doc have put our heads together because we want to celebrate the game. We want to bring the game together. We want to bring the fans together beforehand. So what have we come up with on the day of the game?
Yeah, so first ACT government's declared the Lions event as a special event. So what that means in Canberra is hospitality venues are able to stay open later, and it's relaxed a few laws around the service of alcohol and stuff. So it's going to be a bit of fun around that. So it's great to have the government support.
So the Lions fans have changed the laws in Canberra.
Yeah, basically. Which is really cool because, yes, it's been tough for some hospo venues since the lockdowns and cost of living and all that. So that's amazing. The doc, we're doing a big fan zone. The government's let us have all the space next to the pubs. There's a big quadrangle sort of space, which is going to give us space for another 300 or 400 people. So we're doing a big fan zone with you, Pemby. We're going to have Q&As with past players. A lot of guys from the 2013 Brumbies side that won, so Q&As with them. We've got the choir, Australian Rugby Choir, come down. I think you're going to lead the sing-along with them, Pemby.
We are going to really bring it out. We're going to bring it that afternoon.
There's that. We've got plenty of Guinness auction. So it's a fundraising for community rugby for all the local clubs around here, and also I think we might have a pie eating contest or two just to mix things up. So and then buses out to the game because we're sort of about a 15-minute drive to the stadium. So
you'll be able to go to the event.
Come to us at midday, hang around all day till 5:30. Buses out to the stadium.
And then walk how many metres to the bus?
Oh, they're 3 or 4 metres, and bus to and from the game, and we can drop the city on the way back to go to King O'Malley's, which is the big Irish pub in town, for the aftermatch. So it's going to be awesome. We're really excited. I just, sort of kind of pinching myself, it was
a great idea when you came up with it.
Well, I remember every moment of that 2001 series, like Roffey's intercept, Justin Harrison's line-out steal, And then never, like watching that, I was actually on rugby tour in New Zealand on a school tour in 2001, watching that and remember every minute of it. I think we're in Palmerston. No, we're in Rotorua, like playing some schools there. And just, absolute peak of Aussie rugby. And I never dreamed that I'd even play a game for the Brumbies, let alone a game for the Wallabies, let alone in a Lions series. Like, I'm still as shocked as anyone. I played for Australia. And to have been, fast forward 12 years, I got to lead us out for the second test in Melbourne. So, 12 years on from Roffey's game, because it was my 50th test. And then to be part of the decider didn't pan out. I'm sure we're planning to ask a few questions about that.
We'll go past that.
We'll go past that. But that night, I mean, I was actually going to propose to my wife on the sideline that night. I had it all planned out. Was that because I'm from Sydney, and I was like, all right, we're going to beat these Muppets, and it's going to be history again, like 12 years. We're going to win on the bell. Like, had it all planned out, and then I was going to propose to my wife. And obviously, as history will say, it didn't quite pan out like that. The match didn't pan out, but if anyone's concerned, I proposed a few days later, and it all worked out well.
Did you say no?
No, I hadn't asked my father-in-law because we'd been in camp for so long, and I hadn't asked him. So it was actually probably kind of a good thing that we didn't win, and I didn't propose on the sideline, because then we got home, and a few days later I asked his permission and then proposed the next day. So
very good.
And to be there now for another 12 years, chance for my pub to be involved with helping people celebrate what's going to be, celebrate the win from 12 years ago. Yeah. And obviously, to just have the dock a part of, even for just a few hours, a part of Lions history, for me, is just so unbelievably special. It's something I'm really pinching myself and just couldn't be more excited about.
But again, this is the superpower of the game. It doesn't matter where you come from. The Lions fans and the Brumbies fans on that occasion, on that day, they're the same people. They just live in different parts of the world. And so one of the things we're going to be doing throughout the day is making sure that the Brumbies fans and the Lions fans are talking together. So you're not going to be able to just sort of, blob off in red jerseys. We're going to bring everybody together and actively create this sense of fun ahead of what's going to be a great game that night. So jump onto Humanitix if you're looking for it, because you've got to get a ticket to get in, and they will be. They're going to be sold out. There's no question they're going to be sold out. So if you're listening to this now, don't miss it, because you'll be dark if you do, because it will be a great afternoon ahead of what should be a great game.
Well, and Finn mentioned it, just all the stuff that happens around the match is just so much a part of the, the specialness of a Lions tour. People are, they save up their money for 8 years now, because Lions fans didn't get to go on the last tour because of COVID. So to be a part of that, something the doc takes really, we take really seriously, and we're going to do our best to put on the best day experience for fans. And if you're in Canberra, Finn, love to host your mate for a Guinness or two.
Appreciate it. Won't say no. Actually, I've got work to do that night.
Don't say no, mate. Don't say. We'll get you some waters.
Yeah, appreciate it. I'll be there.
So Humanitix, if you want to come, and as I say, I would encourage you to do it as quickly as possible. I think it's $50 for the ticket, and then
if you want a bus, it's like an extra $10.
Another $10 to get on the bus as well. So don't miss that. That is going to be absolutely special. Now, listen, well, thank you, boys, for this very special Lions edition. I think we will absolutely do it again. One of the big things about the Rugby Unity podcast is what we call the third voice, which is the voice of the audience. And we do have some listener questions that we're going to close up on before we head out. And the first one is to you, Ben, from Pat from Glen Innes. Big fan of the pod. Ben, just wondering, what's one thing the Wallabies absolutely have to get right if they're going to win the Lions series?
If there was just one thing, they've just got to keep their composure. Just keep and enjoy the moment. I think it's something I look back on. I think I let the moment overwhelm me. I'm not going to speak for my other teammates, but the fact we didn't put our best foot forward in that series decider is probably a sign that we didn't handle the moment or the weeks, especially the week before Melbourne. We did, as a group, didn't handle it all that well, all the pressure. So really enjoy the moment, stay grounded, enjoy that it's a once in a career opportunity. And just have a crack. I mean, I think Aussie fans will be okay if we lose, but as long as we go down swinging, and that was just the bitter taste in my mouth was losing convincingly in the decider. After the first test were a point each, like they won by a point, we just missed a kick to win, and we won the second test on the bell. just go down swinging just have a crack and go down and just see what happens.
And Finn, to you, Alice from Dublin says, Finn, I love Rugby Pass. I look at it every day. As someone who is following the Wallabies and the Lions, can you write the headlines for the last match of the series? So I think what is saying there, what is the headline going to be the day after the final test match in Sydney?
That's easy, guys. Wallaby sweep the Lions. And just something like that, right? It's no, I'm not too sure. I think in all likelihood it'll be something about the Lions winning the series, right? But I think, like Ben said, it's the most important thing from an Australian point of view, and I think from a rugby point of view as well. Like, let's take a step back. You know, Australian rugby is so important to the global game. With the World Cup in 2 years, the Women's World Cup in 4 years, so as long as the Wallabies can put up a bit of a fight, then that's a win. But I think in all likelihood, to answer the question, it'll be something along the lines of Lions make history with series win in Australia. So I guess we'll see.
Very good. So listen, just quickly before you do go, Rugby Pass, just give people a bit of an idea about what that is, and a big thanks to Rugby Pass for allowing you to be, share your time with us through the tour.
Yeah, so Rugby Pass, I guess the world's biggest, I'd say, multimedia rugby platform. There's Rugby Pass TV, which does stream various games, competitions, be that the 7 series and various 15s matches, obviously, around the world as well. I write for the website, so basically I just jump on and try and talk about the game that I think we all love. Right, there is an app, so go check that out, and it's it's pretty good journalism. No bias there, but it's from the team. It's a good team we've got there.
Excellent. So Finn Morton and Ben Alexander, thank you so much for joining me on the Rugby Unity podcast today. And to you, the audience, your voice is absolutely crucial in shaping the future of rugby. So please keep the comments and the suggestions coming. Keep the responses on TikTok and Instagram coming, and LinkedIn. And don't forget to subscribe to the Rugby Unity podcast on your favourite podcast catcher. And always, please, if you could leave us a rating or a review, that does help us to be found. But yes, a great and very generous thank you to Finn and for Ben for joining us today. We look forward to bringing you some more special episodes of Rugby Unity as the Lions tour continues to roll through Australia. But for the moment, be kind to each other. I'm David Pembroke, and it's bye for now.